Ignore it.
All right. That's the
Something
best thing
bad
to
happens,
do.
just ignore it.
Just hit close. It's fine.
Mhm.
Just say,
Okay.
okay. Yeah, sure.
Sure, fine. Go away. Okay.
The amount of times I've been told that in my life.
What's going on, everyone? This is the Aggie Game Day Extra Podcast. I'm Travis Brown, KBTX Senior, Texas A&M sports writer. I don't know who I am. Over there, Chief Meteorologist
Is this the
Max Crawford.
the 70th episode that we've
It is
done
the
this?
61st.
61st.
But
okay.
quite.
I didn't know who
I
I was
rounded up.
before then. It's kind of an existential crisis.
Nobody knows who we are.
Over here, he's back,
Yeah, hey.
making his grand reappearance in the pod. Tyler Shaw.
Been a little bit.
How sleepy are you?
Very sleepy.
Yeah.
Not getting much sleep at all. But, we just kind of
All because
shrug
of
along.
all because of growing the beard. That's all you've been doing the past 7 weeks.
Yeah.
huh?
Pretty-
yeah,
pretty
so
much.
If you notice, we need to
Working on the
zoom
beard.
in to get the beard cam here.
It's a new look I'm trying, so.
Yeah.
I
like it.
we all
I
know
like
you
it.
just wanted to be more like Daryl every day. and
Yep.
So you had to grow out the facial hair. But yeah, no, Tyler was away with his new baby James.
Yeah.
How's the baby doing?
He's doing great. Yeah, he's, eating and sleeping and, doing all
Pooping
the other
pooping,
stuff. Yep.
doing all the baby things.
Can I
growing.
call him Jimbo?
No.
Okay.
You cannot.
All right.
Well,
I will commit
just
that to
because of
memory.
that, I will start calling him that.
No.
Tyler,
What if you get the money that goes like that Jimbo got?
Yeah, sure. If someone gives me $70 million, then you can call him whatever you want.
I would change any. Yeah,
Oh, we'll legally change his name to Jimbo
Right,
if you
exactly,
give me $70
same.
million.
easy.
And it is interesting because we have two baby Jameses around here now
Yeah.
that were born
New
right
James,
at the same time.
KBTX,
so,
yeah.
it gets a little confusing around here. What is the one thing about young child rearing that you forgot from your oldest, who is you're going on like 10 now?
Yeah, it's been a while. Probably the. I mean, I knew that they obviously have to eat so often, but I kind of put it into practice of like, oh wow, he is actually going to need to eat every 3 hours, and really he's a hungry little dude. So there's times where he'll go an hour and a half and he's ready to eat again. So
Yeah.
it's just the amount of times that he's going to need to just wake up and eat, and there's not really, at least yet, because he's only 6 weeks. There's not those long stretches where he's satisfied. So
We talked about this before. You've kind of discovered what the things that kind of calm him down when he's a little upset. What was it, water?
Yeah,
or
water.
something?
He loves water. You turn a faucet on and he kind of can subdued, or sit him in nice warm water. He's very finicky about the temperature, but if you get a nice warm bath going, he'll just even if he's hungry, he's kind of satisfied.
I mean,
chilling there.
Max, you would enjoy like a nice warm bath and maybe a glass of wine. And
I'll take the glass of wine and nix the bath.
are you not a soak in your own filth kind of guy?
No, I really am not. I would much rather shower and then probably shower after a hot tub or pool. To me, it's got to be hot or like cold, which in the summer in Texas, the pool always ends up being lukewarm anyway, and so
Yeah.
that's the closest to a bath I get. I don't really like taking baths.
Okay, I mean a hot tub's pretty nice.
Yeah. To
we
me,
went-
that's different.
We went down. Speaking of the lukewarm pool, when my wife and I went down to a destination wedding in the Dominican several years ago, it was in February, and all these people were in the pool having a good time because it's Dominican in February, and that pool was too cold for our Texas hind
Yeah.
ends. We had to go into the hot tub, which felt like a normal Texas
Sure.
summer pool.
I mean, that part of the Caribbean also, like, you can get cold fronts that travel all the way down to Cuba and the Dominican and like even Jamaica and parts of central Mexico and stuff like that. It doesn't happen very often, but February is probably the time that it would happen.
Have you been to California beaches or any along the
Yeah,
Pacific?
yeah. Have you been in the Pacific? Because
you
that's
would not,
pretty cold
you would not
water.
survive there.
I
Yeah,
haven't been in the Pacific, but I've been to those beaches.
yeah. That to me, I love that water. It's awesome. It is
yeah.
a rush. There's nothing like waking up and then just like jumping straight in the ocean. It's awesome.
Yeah. Well, let's go
Anyway.
ahead and jump straight into
Wow.
the headlines this week. Listen,
Good job.
I'm a pro
Great.
now.
Great segue.
So we have a lot of stuff going on at A&M this week. Let's start off with the biggest news, I think, and that is A&M soccer coach G. Gary retires after
That's why they call him Coach G.
That's why they call him
Don't even
Coach
worry
G.
about pronouncing it.
Coach G retires after 33 seasons at the helm of the A&M soccer program. He is the only head coach to ever be at the helm of that program. In 1993, he was hired as I believe it was a 30-year-old out of Hardin-Simmons, and he has stayed with that program ever since. They had a streak of,
26 in a row.
NCAA tournament appearances in a row before they went 2 for 4 in the last 4 seasons. 2 for 5, I guess it was.
If you include this season.
Including this season, 2 for 5 in the last seasons. His contract was up in March, and so he decided to step away, and we'll be doing a lot of work with the two soccer coaches associations. He's kind of has some admin roles with them, as well as working with the working committee, the NCAA women's working committee on rules and things like that. Moving forward, he'll have a role with that as well. Things he was already doing while he was still a coach, but he'll be able to devote some more time for there. And importantly for this community, staying in the community, because
we need that.
We've talked about this before. More so than any A&M coaches since maybe like Gary Blair. He is a bastion of head coaches past, where he's as much a part of the community as he is a part of the A&M or the A&M athletics department. And he's a guy you'll see jogging through the neighborhood. He'll be at high school games. He's and I mean this with all due respect, he's kind of like a high school coach in that he is a fixture of the community,
right,
more so than this college coach up on a pedestal.
Right. Kind of comes in, hides in the shadows, does, so ingrained in what they're doing in their own work.
We'll start with the fan perspective.
He's the anti-Buzz.
We'll start over here with the fan perspective. With Max. And just, I know you were here, you went to A&M, he was the coach there. Yeah. Just kind of your initial thoughts on what G did for A&M soccer from that fan's perspective.
I mean, to me, my experience has always been the fish camp games, because I've been to a half dozen of those through my involvement with fish camp, and then several others just throughout the season and stuff like that. And it's a lot of fun. Like, soccer is a beautiful sport, and I do wish that beyond those like fish camp games and just other stuff, like more deciding stuff, the games against TU and things like that we could have devoted a little bit more attendance to, especially those really, really great teams. But just the fact that he is A&M soccer until yesterday. And so like that legacy in and of itself is it's crazy, because that just doesn't really happen anymore. Like, over 3 decades of experience starting the program and leading it to where it is now. And it was kind of a situation where you're the victim of the expectations that you set for the program, right? Where every year we'd go in and be like, okay, well, what seed are we going to be in the national tournament this year? And each year you would expect to either win a conference tournament or the regular season conference, and that was the standard that he set for the program. So, and to reiterate what you said, just the fact that he loves this community so much. He's got 3 kids that I believe all went to A&M. I think one of them might still be in high school, but
the youngest is at A&M.
Okay, there you go. Yeah, so I mean, like, they're all ingrained in this community too, and I'm really glad that he's still going to be around, and maybe we can catch a round of golf with him at some point or something like that. Like, seeing Coach Blair around, just being able to talk ball and being able to relax a little bit, which I know coaches don't think that way for the most part. Gary did once he retired. Yeah. He was like, okay, I'm going to embrace this, but I'm sure Coach G is going to want to get back to work in some form or fashion, but I'm really glad that he's staying here.
Tyler, the coverage perspective.
Yeah. I think it almost goes without saying, you almost, something needs to be named after.
Yeah.
You don't go 3 decades. I mean, 33 seasons. He's the last one standing as far as the only coach at A&M that has been the only coach.
Was hired by John David Crow.
That was something I was going to get to,
right?
Which is remarkable.
Just the longevity and kind of what he built. Again, I mean, Max touched on it. He kind of established this standard. It was shocking when they didn't make the NCAA tournament, because it was just kind of you didn't even think about it. 26 years in a row. You just assumed that was what was going to happen. And so that first year that they missed out on it, I mean, it was this big deal because, I mean, Texas A&M soccer, they always make the tournament. They're just kind of always in the mix. And he had some great runs and, going to the Elite Eight. And again, obviously didn't reach that mountaintop that they would have liked. But again, they named Gary Blair Court and Reed Arena, right before he left. I think something's going to have to have G's name on it. And he was a great advocate just for the sport in general. Beyond Texas A&M, he always loved talking soccer at any level, and so it was. It's great that he's still going to be around.
He retires as the 5th winningest coach in Division I history, over 500 wins. I think it was 528,
3 or something like that.
23, yeah, for his, and he had 2 years at Hardin Simmons before at A&M. Those are included in there. But yeah, it definitely. I'm going to use a generalized term, but definitely statue territory.
Yeah,
at A&M, whether that is actually that or the naming of some piece of facility or something like that is certainly there. Because I think you got to give Eric Bell at TCU a call.
Yeah,
he's elevated that program to being the best in the state right now. You do kind of, there is still. When you even look at baseball and things like that at the college level, there is still some regionality to some of this. And if you're the best in the state of Texas, the bigger schools in the state of Texas are probably going to want to give you a call or at least kick the tires on that. He's a guy who knows how to recruit the state and has absolutely elevated that program there. So I think those are 2 names that I would preliminarily research into a little bit because I think that's some directions they could go.
Well, I think because of the standard G set, they're going to have to swing big with this hire because they want to get back there and if they do, if you get a big hire and you bring in someone that immediately kind of turns things around and they start getting back and making deep runs in the tournament, then you're going to have the conversation of, and you get the attendance up. Maybe these soccer athletes are kind of in the running of maybe getting in some of that revenue sharing and things like that.
Absolutely.
So I think that's kind of the direction, soccer wants to put pressure on the university to cut us a little bit of that NIL.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But it's also a situation too where A&M, unlike maybe a lot of schools around the country, are able to offer the entire roster scholarships,
right?
Which is a part of that house,
right? That's
too.
A big.
And there are schools where women's soccer the whole roster isn't going to get scholarship money. So true. That is another little bit of a perk there. Something that Max, you mentioned, and you had a view of this on the old tube. Tyler, you had a better view of this down from where you were standing on the sidelines. But when A&M beats LSU 49-25, by the end of the game, it was mostly just the 12th man that was in the stands, and some of the students went and invaded the LSU student section,
doing Tiger chants with the Tigerland band.
And so it was a little bit of a wild scene there. Certainly nothing like I've seen. I think it goes back to kind of hearing some of the comments from Chris Fowler and how kind of amazed he was at the scene because they've called a lot of games there. Preliminary thoughts on A, that game, but B, they won there for the first time since 1994, and they did it kind of in an utterly dominating fashion to the point where Tiger Stadium was a shell of its normal self.
So yeah, because of the timing of this game and I'll admit, going into this, I thought this was going to be a close game. It was going to come down to the wire. So this was a night game, obviously. Kick at 6:30. For our show purposes, we need to get highlights in. I mean, show starts at 10. These highlights are probably running around 10:15. So I'm the only one down there shooting video. So it was one of those things that I was getting prepped before. I was telling Aaron, who was back here in the studio, hey, I'm going to send stuff back at halftime. I might be tied up because if this is a close game, I can't miss anything and go back and edit. Well, Nate Borkacher scored that short touchdown to go up 42-18 in the fourth quarter. So, well, shoot, anything that happens past this point doesn't even matter. They've already blown this thing open.
By the way, who got that Nate Borkacher shot for the highlights?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for covering me on that. So as soon as that happened, I said, I've got all I need. It was 9:30. I can go back and send back highlights and everything, and we'll be good for the game, and I can come back and finish it out. When I went out, it actually took me a while to get to that editing room because of all the fans that were leaving the concourse.
You have to go through basically the concourse to get from the field to where that photo workroom is, which is kind of, or even the post-game press conference room,
right?
Which is kind of a weird deal. It can get congested.
Right, and normally I'd be able to walk there just fine, but because of how many fans were leaving at that point, I was kind of swimming through people just to try to. I mean, it was crazy. The floodgates just opened, and fans were just filing out. And then by the time I finished editing and came back out to the field, that's when you could see that like it was a half-empty stadium. And there was a lot of maroon, very apparent, which was a sight I didn't think I'd ever see in Death Valley.
I could be wrong. Were Fowler and Herbstreit here for the Mississippi State game? Or that actually that might have been SEC Network. I think it was because I think I saw Cole Kubelik on the day. He's hard to miss. I don't recall a broadcast. I mean, they did such a good job of displaying that too. And I don't know if that was just they have really good producers and directors, or if that was Chris and Kirk just kind of noticing how things were. But the last like 15 minutes of that game was just. It was a promo for A&M and A&M football, and maybe that's probably why I enjoyed it so much. But like the fact that they were feeding into like here's what Tiger Stadium looks like right now, and how bizarre that it is. Which I've seen a couple of Alabama fans saying like, oh, we do that to them every other time we go to Death Valley and stuff like that. And be like, I remember watching those games, and I don't remember seeing anything like that. It was crazy, like. And even at the beginning of the game when that very first drive, which they ended up driving down and scoring a touchdown, like you could still hear A&M fans, at least according to the broadcast. Like you could hear people cheering and yelling when A&M was on defense. And there were so many ups and downs throughout that game. Like when it was going into halftime, did y'all weren't surprised because you thought it was going to be close, but was the environment still like, was it still rocking by that point? Because there had to have been a peak there, like when Marcel throws a pick, when they block the punt, stuff like that. Like it had to have been, the atmosphere had to have been at some point like, oh, this is Death Valley, right?
I'll tell you. Oh well, I mean, before the game, I'll say more from any away SEC venue I've been at. There's more, I love college football goosebumps moments at Death Valley during the pregame, during some of the. Than probably any other stadium. And you were getting those before the game. And even because it's Tiger Stadium and it's the LSU fan base, you knew they were still around because there was a pretty significant boo you could hear when the Fighting Texas Aggie band took the field.
Sure.
So you knew they were still around then. But that was about the last time that I heard a collective noise for that would be that noticeably against A&M.
It never got rocking in the second half, so the peak was probably that, when they take the lead and maybe that second interception when, things just are rolling in LSU's favor in that second quarter. But had this game gone differently, there was another level that it never got to.
Yeah.
Because this is all happening in the first half.
Right. Yeah, that tip-off pick, at least just as far as me watching the game, that sounded like the biggest crowd pop, the biggest singular one. And like I just thought, man, Trey'Dez Green is just going to absolutely kill us. And like he was kind of a non-factor in the second half, which the entire LSU offense was. But I have to feel like the punt return tutter was kind of the backbreaker, where everyone was finally like, okay, well, we're going to lose. But that was midway through the third quarter?
Yeah, and that's about the time you could start to see fans move into
and that's when I finally, when I felt myself like, oh, this isn't going to be a close game, is it?
Yeah.
Like A&M's actually they're going to run away with this thing.
I'll admit to it. We talked about it on the post-game recap. At halftime, I texted Tyler and I said, this is going to be the game that the mistakes catch up to them. Because it just felt that there was too many mistakes, and there's that culmination of all
said the
the
same
mistakes.
Thing. Right.
And I felt like, and it was just the exact opposite.
Did y'all notice I did not text y'all during that game?
Yeah, kind of funny.
I restrained myself because the thoughts that I was thinking, especially after that second pick, I was like, let's just see how this plays out.
I almost texted you because it felt weird not getting a text from you against. Like, do I need to make sure he's okay?
There was also a gigantic cluster of thunderstorms moving in, so I did have to work for a little bit on Saturday evening. But last thing I'll say about this, unless you want to keep talking about it, is I just forgot, but it is just so amazing to me. You mentioned 9:30. Like, all of these night games that we've had have been over before 10 o'clock. That's crazy to me, because in this day and age where every timeout is a media timeout, so that's an additional 3 minutes. And if you score a touchdown, and it goes to a commercial break, and then you kick off, and then it goes to another commercial break and stuff like that. Like, to me, it's a testament to how the fourth quarters have gone in these night games that A&M has been a part of, with the exception of Notre Dame and I guess Arkansas as well. But like, if you're talking Mississippi State, Florida, and now LSU, like, these games that are kicking off at 6 and 6:30, that they're over before 10 o'clock is just kind of crazy to me.
I would say, teams thinking that because of what A&M has been able to display in the pass game, or excuse me, what A&M has been able to do in pass defense and pass rush, they need to run the ball. So the teams are running the ball a lot against A&M.
And then we're running the ball
success.
in the second half.
The second half, the A&M has really established the run.
Yeah.
In the second half of most of these games, and that clock is just
Yeah.
and they're purposely. It went back to the Arkansas game where the third quarter, that E.J. Smith quarter, was just absolutely just taking the air out of the game. And they've kind of done that in the second half. That win took the air a lot out of LSU's sails, to the point where Brian Kelly's fired. He's done. There's 12 coaching vacancies now in Division I, or in FBS football. And questions start to get raised. Will Colin Klein, Texas A&M's offensive coordinator, jump over to one of these open head coaching jobs, or as part of the domino effect of the coaching jobs? I think as it sits right now, there's been some reports that he could be linked towards the Oklahoma State job. We can just touch on this quickly, but what are your thoughts on, is this the season that you think Colin Klein will necessarily make a move?
I think it is, and the only reason is there is so many vacancies right now, and a lot of dominoes that are starting to fall. That I know, and I've heard a lot of people say, obviously he's going to be a head coach at some point. Just he needs to make sure it's the right one, the right move, because he's in a great spot right now. But when you start looking at head coaching cycles, there hasn't been one this open since, I think, like 21, 4 years ago. So it's not every year that you have this kind of opportunity. So if there are enough opportunities for him, this might be the time for him to jump the gun. So if I had to guess, I would say, this is probably a good opportunity.
I think it is entirely up to Colin Klein and Colin Klein's wife. Probably should have listed that in reverse order, right?
Yeah, that's true.
But I think if he wants to be a head coach, I think that he absolutely will come January or whenever it is. He had, in the presser, and it was thanks to a follow-up question that you asked him, was like, that was essentially kind of like, do you see yourself being here for a while, or do you think you'll be a head coach eventually? And he was like, I absolutely have head coaching aspirations, but like. And it was the perfect diplomatic answer, but there was also a little bit of like, here right now, we've got a long way to go. I expect to still be here, things like that, which obviously 3 months from now, that may have actually meant something entirely different. But it seemed to me like right now he's focused on that, like actually, where some coaches will tell you that, like he seems to just be focused on that, though his agent's, I'm sure, taking care of some other things. I think it is, are you going to stay here for another season or two, maybe even 3, and wait for that perfect job for you to jump into head coaching, so you know that you've got all your ducks in a row and things like that? Or do you want a pretty good opportunity to go and get your feet wet in the head coaching world? And I don't think there's a wrong answer with either of those things. So to me, it wouldn't surprise me either way. Well, I'd be mildly surprised if he stayed on as offensive coordinator. I think he'd get a great contract extension. But I do think that we're kind of on borrowed time with him, for sure.
It would make sense to me if he stayed on as the offensive coordinator, because you look at, in the revenue sharing and NIL landscape, you look at some of the mid-major, lower Power 4 head coaching positions, and there has been coaches who have left head coaching positions at that level to go to bigger power conference schools to be a coordinator, because of the stability that provides in a program that has NIL money, that has revenue sharing money for these programs, and is at a level where top athletes want to get to. Because if you're at that lower power conference or G5 level, you're having to rebuild your roster every year with little NIL resources because your best players are going to move on to the SEC or the Big Ten or a championship contending team. And I think that there is a certain amount of coaches that say that's not necessarily a winning formula. Maybe it's better to be a coordinator because a lot of times the coordinators can make a decent amount of money at some of these big schools.
And I think he'll be top 3, top 5 coordinators paid by the end of this season, assuming he stays.
If A&M gets a sniff at the idea that maybe he would want to stick around a little bit more, he should certainly have the leverage to get a contract, new contract in that. So it'll be interesting to see because he said his comment was it has to be at the right time with the right people, and I think that makes sense for family, wife. It has to make sense for the program that he wants to go to, familiarity with the region, the recruiting. But I think the people in the right time and the program has to do with, like, are you going to have the resources available to you to be able to compete financially? And that's not necessarily the case. I think a place like Oklahoma State would have those resources. But then when you look at a place like Arkansas, I know they probably have some candidates that they would probably want to kick the tires on ahead of Colin Klein. But as you've seen a lot of times with these coaching searches, targets get out there and all of a sudden those guys passed. And then you're looking at a new wave of targets. And would a place like, I could see him bailing for a place like Arkansas or a place in the SEC where you're going to have those resources available to you. But I don't know if I'm him, if I'm jumping to a Tulane, if that job opens up or something like that. I don't think that's the right move.
Yeah,
with the position you're in at A&M in the SEC.
I don't think even upper tier G5 would be something that I would personally, considering his pedigree that he'd want. And maybe there's
from our time in College Football 26, you are a master of the coaching carousel. I think you're pretty much at a new school every year.
I do love the coaching carousel. Though I stayed at Kansas for three seasons, Travis. But speaking of Kansas, I think you also have to ask yourself that question. Like, does he really love Kansas State that much? Which he probably does. That he would kind of be willing to wait and see what happens with Kleiman. And
they're 4-4 right now.
Right. And they've got some very, very important games coming up. They either have Tech this weekend or next weekend. I think it's this weekend. And so I think that could swing one way or the other before the end of the season. They obviously got that big win against Kansas last weekend. And so I think that's worth watching. And to me, that's kind of like Kingsbury with Tech, is maybe you don't feel like you're ready for a head coaching opportunity yet, but if Kansas State comes calling and that's a place you could really see yourself at, would really want to go back to, maybe you have to say, okay, well, I don't know if I'm ever going to get this opportunity again, so I need to try. So I think there's still so much in the air with so much of this season regarding stuff like that. But yeah, I would tend to lean toward him not being here just because of the way that the carousel has already proven to be so crazy, because of the domino effect that you mentioned. But I think you have really good points about NIL and GM structure and how all this revenue sharing stuff. Maybe he's thinking, you know what, let's just kind of see how the dust settles over the next couple of years, and then I'll really be ready, and I'll know that the place that I'm going to is going to set me up for good financial success.
Let's shift gears a little bit to men's basketball. Tyler and I were down there in Fort Bend, the Fort Bend epicenter that had no internet signal or cell signal. It was a blasty blast, let me tell you. They did take down a 7-point win over Arizona State. I hate to be cliche, but it was a little bit of a tale of two halves. The first half, we were texting each other about this team does not look very good. Yeah. And then the second half, they looked pretty good, at least from a shooting and rebounding standpoint. They looked pretty good. I have a little bit of trouble piecing the two halves together in my mind to make a coherent observation from one game, but I'm curious what you thought.
Well, it's funny, we talked to the team today, and Rylan Griffin started out saying, well, we left a lot of points on the board. You scored 95 points. If A&M the last 4 years scored 95 points, I mean, that is a high octane offense for what A&M fans were used to. So I think that's going to be the most jarring thing, is just a completely different style. My kind of initial takeaways. It looks like a team that needs to gel, needs to kind of get used to each other. And you're going to have to get used to seeing, well, they full court press a lot, well, like all the time. So when that happens, you're going to get a lot of wide open buckets. You're gonna give up wide open layups.
It's kind of, and I think that's the point I was going to get to, is that the jarring thing is going to be, it's going to look like when you first watch, you're like, they don't play transition defense very well,
right?
Or they don't when the press gets busted, they don't necessarily play defense well. But I think in reality, what that is, it's like if you send a full casino blitz in football, like sometimes you're going to get to the quarterback, and sometimes they're going to hit the open receiver. And I think it's going to be a little bit of that, but they have the offense to mitigate open twos with 3-pointers.
Right. If you're trading 2s and 3s, Buckyball is going to outscore you. And so I think that's where and again, they're going to be high-scoring games. They're going to be in a lot of games, and so it's not going to be a bunch of lockdown defense. To our eyes, it's not going to look like lockdown defense. They'll get better at that transition D. I think a lot of that is just they're kind of learning the system, but it is going to look like, wow, they're giving up a lot of points, but they're also putting up a lot of points, and the point is to outscore the other. So it's going to be an interesting ride to see how this develops.
It's going to be it is a little bit of whiplash compared to what A&M has watched, not in a good or a bad way. It's just different.
What would you rather see, Max? I mean, I know you. Well, we haven't seen the first game is Monday.
I think just given how the past regime has gone, yeah, I'd rather see something different. I don't know if I didn't have that hindsight that I would necessarily say that. I think in theory I would like a very good, like, strong-nosed defensive team who, like, gets second, third, fourth chance points and stuff like that, and, like, you're going to have a tough time scoring on them no matter what. So, like, in theory, in principle, that sounds awesome, but I've also watched a lot of Aggie basketball over the past 5 seasons, and like a lot of other Aggie fans, I was getting tired of it. So I'm happy for a change of pace. I think Bucky seems like a really good dude. It's exciting, and I think that it's going to inject some excitement into the program. So I say full steam ahead with it, even if it looks a little frantic or a little bit chaotic, especially at first.
To the football fans, and you can tell me, it's the difference between early 1990s R.C. Slocum football team where it's all about the wrecking crew defense to, like, wheels off Mike Leach. Like, it is that
This is an air raid offense.
Yeah, this is absolutely.
And it sounds like a very blitz happy defense. Is maybe the best way I can compare it when they do the full court press is like, we're going to blitz you a lot, even if that means a couple people being wide open.
Well,
they will sell out for steal attempts, even if it pulls. I mean, I don't know. Maybe that's something that corrects, but at least from what we gleaned, they'll sell out for steal attempts, even if it takes them out of position. Sometimes it hits and it's easy layups and turn around and press again. Sometimes it results in the other team getting a 2-on-1.
The thing I'm interested in is when they get to conference play, because we saw all of this against Arizona State, which they're kind of supposed to be at the bottom of the Big 12.
Ken Palm had A&M. I mean, this is the preseason ranking, so there's not a lot of stats to go into this. Had A&M at 35, and they had Arizona State, I believe, at 75 ranked. So that's at least one little metric to look at.
So it'll be interesting to see kind of the level of competition, how it stacks up. But this style, I think, if done well and with the right personnel, I think can be very effective. They seem like they have the shooters. So if you get a hot night from a couple of those guys, I think it's going to be very successable with that.
And real quick, did you have one more?
Well, go through this headline, and then I might have some breaking news.
Okay. Volleyball continues their tear. They beat LSU. We were there in Baton Rouge, got to see it. Then went and beat Ole Miss. And then they take on number 2 Texas Friday, and then another ranked Tennessee match on Sunday. This is kind of that, like, everything's been building to, even though, Jamie, when we talked to him today, was a little hesitant, but everything is kind of building to this when it comes to seeding and who's going to win the conference championship. Because A&M is going to need these wins if they want to get to win a title, but they also need it for seeding. And he was very clear on making sure that the team wasn't just focused on Texas, but the traveling to Tennessee right after was an important thing. So that'll be something to keep an eye on Halloween.
Yes.
Texas versus A&M. Okay, Max. I
Okay,
don't have a
so-
breaking news stinger.
Well, and that's fine. And I don't even know how much time we have left, so you can just tell me to shut up. But I had 60 texts during this, and if you watch on video, sometimes you see me looking down at my phone, and that's generally for weather purposes, but sometimes it's sports. And apparently, there was a press conference that involved the governor of Louisiana, who said, and this is paraphrasing here, but it is from a reporter who is there, who essentially said, Scott Woodward, the athletic director at LSU, is not going to be the one who is making this hire for LSU football. In fact, he apparently said, this is a direct quote, I would let Trump pick the next LSU football coach before I let Scott Woodward pick him. This is the governor of Louisiana. So listen, there's a lot of different ways we can go here. One of which, nobody can argue, they care about their football in Louisiana. We think we do in Texas, which we do. But it's a whole different level in Louisiana. And you look at all of the lack of decommitments after Brian Kelly was fired. You cannot tell me that there is a much better job in college football than for Louisiana State University.
Probably the easiest place to recruit.
I was going to say Ohio State, maybe Oregon, just because of the mountains of money that is at your disposal. But I think it's LSU. I think it is the number one job in college, and that's part of the reason I was kind of ticked that Brian Kelly got fired so easily. But I also think it was a terrible hire from the beginning, and you can go back and look at my texts with people and stuff. I never thought that was going to work. I thought it was going to last a little longer than this. But to me, it's just a little wild that the governor in this press conference seems to be so involved in finding this. It's not surprising, though, just given the makeup and the culture of Louisiana. But I have to think there are a few Louisiana State fans who are kind of just like, dude, get out of here. I don't know. So that was what I wanted to talk about very quickly. And again, we could do an entire pod on this, and people have, but
I mean,
it's wild.
For the longest time, I can't take credit for this. I was listening to the College Football Insider podcast. So that's Andy Staples and Ross Dellinger. And those guys, and if Ross Dellinger knows more about LSU football than all
and
of
pretty
us,
much anybody, right?
Kind of going through the history of that, and just the fact that there has been interesting politics in the state of Louisiana for a long time when it comes to involvement, and one might even say meddling in different aspects of things. It was they mentioned Nick Saban was kind of the guy that came in and took that political focus and turned it on LSU football to be able to bring in resources and kind of build back up a program financially and everything like that. And that's kind of when a little bit the political eyes were set on LSU football, and it kind of always been that way ever since. I mean, it's a state too where they have two pro teams, but those pro teams are second and third in the pecking order to LSU football.
Which is crazy. The New Orleans Saints, which is a national brand, LSU football, I think, for most Louisianians, takes precedent over the Saints.
Yeah, and for the most part, when you can be the governor of Louisiana and have your fingerprints on LSU football more so than necessarily you can the New Orleans Saints. So there's a factor of that too. But yeah, I mean, with Dellinger's reporting, when these meetings about if they were going to keep or let Brian Kelly go, they were taking place in the governor's mansion with their board of regents and Scott Woodward and everybody else. But it is telling of the fact, and we've reported it multiple times and talked about it, the fact that the two biggest buyouts in college football history were executed by Scott Woodward, and both of them came to fruition. That's Jimbo Fisher's $75 million, and there are reports that they're negotiating it, but right now it's like $53 million for Brian Kelly, and I think that there is, you can say Scott Woodward was in charge of bringing Kim Mulkey back to LSU, bringing Jay Johnson to LSU to win a national title, but it's football at LSU,
right? And that's a pretty big deal, isn't it? Which LSU baseball and women's basketball obviously is too.
Yeah, but I just think it was, like you said, I think it was a strikeout and not necessarily strong contract negotiations in that, and it makes sense. Even if it's not necessarily Scott Woodward isn't going to be involved with picking the guy, I certainly don't think you want him executing and negotiating the contract for sure.
Right, 'cause you're going to have another $80 million buyout in their contract there if Scott Woodward's doing it. Now, It's funny, we talked about LSU being, maybe the top job in college football, but at the same time, how many of these guys would be hesitant?
It looks like a
knowing
clown show right now.
Right. I mean, the clown show it is, and then if you're not winning a national championship in a couple of years, I mean, you're out. You're out of there.
That I maybe given that sort of context to the situation, I'm so curious to see who ends up with the Florida job and who ends up with the LSU job. And there are so many other openings, and there are probably going to be so many more too that are crazy.
Here's the thing: the LSU job. I think most could argue Les Miles and especially Ed Orgeron probably not national championship caliber coaches.
No, but they did it anyway.
The resources are so good at LSU, and the whether it's the NIL, the recruiting pipeline in Louisiana and East Texas, that like you can be not a national championship elite level coach and win a natty, and I think that's probably pretty appealing to a lot of coaches.
Case in point, you've got OBJ and Jefferson, and there's another one who I'm not thinking of right now, who were in a Les Miles offense, but were at LSU because it was LSU.
Yeah.
And I don't know.
Well, I mean, just like, I know you're not a big NFL guy, Travis, but when they do this everywhere, where during the game they'll put up on the scoreboard like they're former athletes, they're now in the NFL, and here they call it NFLSU. I don't know if there's a more impressive college out there.
Not
when
even
they start
Alabama.
going through, look at Jaden Daniels, Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase.
And how many of that was just the 2019 team?
Right.
That was like the best team.
You're talking about Ed Orgeron, not being this big name coach. Well, he had that kind of talent to work with, so anybody can get that kind of talent at LSU. I mean, you're right. It might be the best job.
Yeah.
Over 40 years ago, my parents started C&J Barbecue, and today we continue to honor Dad's legacy with the best barbecue in the Brazos Valley. With locations on Harvey Road, Southwest Parkway, and our newest location on William Joe Bryan, we carry on our family tradition of serving up award-winning barbecue, sides, and desserts. We also offer delivery, catering, as well as custom menus and private chef services. Come visit us today for some of the best barbecue around. C&J Barbecue. The C is for Chip, the J is for Joe, and the barbecue is for you.
Let's go ahead and move over to the conversation. We're going to talk a little Marcel Reed because the question was asked of Colin Klein this week. Is Marcel Reed a true Heisman candidate? And Colin Klein knows something about that. He was himself a Heisman finalist in 2012, finished behind Johnny Manziel and Manti Te'o that year, and so he kind of knows what it's like to go through this whole thing. And also, he is Marcel Reed's coach, so his response quickly was, absolutely. He also went into the fact that he feels it's a team award, and if you're winning games and you're the quarterback and the team is working well around you, that you're going to get the accolades and the praise for that. And so I think there is something to that. Max, let's start with you, because I think that there is arguments both way on this one. Why, in your eyes, do you see him? Do you follow along with Colin Klein and say absolutely he is a Heisman candidate?
Yeah, and I mean, I don't think you're gonna get me to say anything else other than if the ceremony was this weekend, I don't think you would win it. But that's just not the way that it is, and there's so much season left. And if you assume that we continue on this trajectory, let's say it really looks like worst case we're going 10-2. Of course, the worst case is we're going 8-4, but we're not going to do that. In all likelihood, we are winning at least 10 games this season, and that is probably going to include some more amazing Marcel moments. And you can talk about his completion percentage and stuff like that, but if we're 11-1 going into the SEC championship game, and let's just assume it's against Alabama, and it's Ty Simpson versus Marcel Reed at that point in December, I think he absolutely has to be in the conversation. And depending on how his numbers go and how much of the game is predicated on him, then I think absolutely it's reasonable to expect that he could be a finalist and that he could be in New York and that he could even win the Heisman. Now, you're not going to get me to say anything else, because that's my dude, that's my quarterback, that's on an undefeated team. And so I can understand that if he had those same stats on a 6-2 team or on a 5-3 team. Which what is Texas right now? Are they 6-2?
6-2.
A lot of people are putting the side by side of saying, here's Arch's stats versus here's Marcel's stats, and they are similar. Marcel's got more touchdowns, just as many interceptions. I think a slightly better completion percentage. Somebody brought up the point that, a big reason that Arch has all those touchdowns is because they were scored against UTEP and Sam Houston State, whereas Marcel's got a lot of touchdowns against Notre Dame and Arkansas and LSU and so on and so forth. And so I think that's kind of what Colin Klein was trying to also articulate, is that it goes beyond the numbers. That's why winning is also important.
Mm-hmm. Tyler, we've discussed this a little bit on our car ride back. What are some of your thoughts? And there's I will define, as you kind of did there. There's a couple different arguments to this. Is he a candidate? Is he, if the season ended right now, is he a winner? There's several different threads to pull at there, so we probably need to clarify in some of that too.
I mean, they never award the Heisman in Week 10. You got to play out the whole season. So at this point, yes, he is a candidate, and the reason is they're the number 3 team in the nation with a high-powered offense. He's the quarterback. So of course you're going to get those eyes. It's very rare. I mean, we've had more in recent years than not that a non-quarterback wins the Heisman. If you could split the Heisman between Mario Craver and Casey Concepcion, I think that's your MVP of the offense right there.
They're probably both going to be Biletnikoff finalists, right? Yeah, I mean, you would have to assume so.
You would think. I think that is your MVP of the team right there. But it's natural that Marcel's going to get that attention. His stats don't jump off the page, but he's had big moments. You mentioned Arkansas, Notre Dame, and what he just did at LSU to kind of dismantle that program. And he's got opportunities for more Heisman-worthy moments. Going to a ranked Missouri team. They still have to take care of a pesky South Carolina team at home. Obviously, let's say they win the next 3 games and they're going into Austin at 11-0. That is 1,000%. Everybody's eyes are going to be on that for a Heisman-worthy moment. Going against your arch rivals with a chance to go 12-0 for the first time since the early 90s. So yes, he's a candidate right now, and he's got a chance to kind of vault himself more in the conversation, despite the stats not really jumping off the page to me. But we kind of looked at, I mean, you wrote about it. It's, I don't want to say a weak year, but it kind of is a weak year right now as far as
I think it is.
Heisman candidate. No one is really stepping up to me at this point.
Yeah,
I mean, who would you say, Trav?
I want to get to that in just a second. I think there's a couple things to define here. So for full transparency, I am a Heisman voter. The criteria for which you're supposed to judge is vague. It's just for the most outstanding player in college football, and that can mean a lot of things. It can mean the best statistical player. It can mean the player that means the most to his team. It can mean a lot, and different Heisman voters value different aspects of it. So that is a part of the thing that you have to consider, is that there is no singular really definition for why a person is a Heisman winner other than the subjective voting criteria. So part of that is statistics. And so I'm going to bring up here, this was the story that I wrote yesterday, and I looked back at, first I looked at in week 8, comparing Marcel Reed to the other quarterbacks that are in contention with Heisman voting. And that's Indiana's Fernando Mendoza, Ohio State's Julian Sayin, Alabama's Ty Simpson, Vanderbilt's Diego Pavia, and Georgia Tech's Haynes King. Marcel does have the worst completion percentage out of those. He has middle of the ground passing yardage. He's kind of in the lower half passing TDs. He's in the upper portion of rushing yards, and has the most TDs, most interceptions of all of those guys. And so statistically, middle of the road. Then if you look down, and I'm going to scroll down here, I looked back at week 8 games in for the last, for the Heisman winners who were quarterbacks since 2013. That was the easiest. 2013 is as far as the database went back to be able to look at week 8. So that's kind of why I picked that. The numbers aren't necessarily, the only person who had a lower completion percentage than Marcel Reed at this point was Lamar Jackson. He had a 58.3, but he also had 2,500 yards and 996 rushing yards with 16 with what was that 38 total total touchdowns.
Lamar was
like
on fire that year.
That was a wild season. He has less passing yards than any of these guys through that span. Jameis Winston had 9 interceptions. That was more there in that 2013 season. That Florida State team was definitely notorious and prone for turning the ball over. So statistically, if you want to look at that piece, and that is just a piece of it, Marcel Reed probably isn't statistically in my top 3 if we had to vote today and this was the total resumes of everyone else. I think part of the thing is the team aspect of it. I think A&M, because of his piece in the team that is A&M that includes great players like Mario Craver, Casey Concepcion, Le'Veon Moss, Ruben Owens, the offensive line, being the conductor of that whole orchestra, certainly is why he's in contention for this and why I would have to put him in this list and compare him to everybody else. But I think the factor that weighs second to me, or sometimes even maybe first to me over stats, is because it is the most outstanding player in college football, how much is that player the reason why the team has been so successful? And I think some might argue that Marcel Reed is in this category because of that. I say the LSU game and the Notre Dame game are the only 2 games where if they had Miles O'Neal back there throwing at a decent amount of the same completion percentage, that they would have still lost. Because I think what Marcel Reed has is he is absolutely clutch at the end of games.
Right.
He is fantastic at the end of games, and that proved itself several times last season, LSU, Auburn, and it proved itself
USC.
at Notre Dame. USC, it proved itself in Notre Dame. I think the other thing that Marcel has going for him is his ability to change the game with his legs, and that proved itself out at LSU both seasons. I think if you had a less mobile quarterback against LSU this year, that game doesn't necessarily turn the way it did in the second half to where it became a landslide. But that factor of importance to the team, I think at this point in the season, Diego Pavia means more to that. If you take Diego Pavia out of that team, that Vanderbilt team isn't at all where they are. If you take Haynes King out of that Georgia Tech team,
oh yeah,
they aren't at all where they are.
They're winless
in this season, and I think that has to weigh a lot.
Sure.
And when you're looking at it, so I would probably statistically, Ty Simpson is probably either Ty Simpson or Fernando Mendoza at Indiana are statistically your best quarterbacks. They have to be in the conversation. I think what they mean to the team guys, Diego Pavia, Haynes King, are really strong in that conversation. And then Marcel Reed to me is like that next tier, right out of it. So he would probably be like 4th in my mind right now, or 5th in my mind right now. But as we've mentioned multiple times, there's a lot of season left to play. And how many times has the Heisman moment been
November?
Late in the season. Yeah, this is when it counts.
Going back to 2022, that's I'm forgetting the TCU quarterback's name.
I don't know. Matt Jokel.
No,
Kenny Hill.
The TCU quarterback.
Those are the TCU quarterbacks.
Yeah, no,
you're. Anyway, that was embarrassing for me.
I mean, you should know this, but
I voted for him.
Max Duggan.
I voted for him number 2, I believe, that season in the Heisman because of basically what he did in the Big 12 championship game, leading them to that point. And Marcel Reed certainly could absolutely go off against Texas and have like a 80% game, blow Texas out of the water, and that's his Heisman moment. And it's like, well, okay, it's Marcel Reed, it's easy. Or Diego Pavia could go off and win the next games. And so, yes, there is absolutely. But if you're looking at it from 8 games into the season, Marcel Reed is probably just on the outside for me.
Can you imagine? I mean, again, this is possible because there's all these moments left. Could you imagine if Marcel Reed and Haynes King are in New York together? I mean, The amount of success that former
That means-
A&M quarterbacks are having
means
this year.
2 A&M Heisman finalists in New York.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those are both Aggies right there.
Right.
Do you count
And-
Kyler Murray?
Of course.
There you go.
Of course
yeah.
I do.
Yeah. And apart from those two guys are both undefeated. Then you have Connor Wigman, who's got his Houston squad at 7-1. So a lot of success with
Found that, too.
those former A&M quarterbacks.
Yep.
So yeah, I just kind of putting a little bit of a bow on it. I think, and Max, I think this is the point that you're getting at too. There's arguments either way, 8 games into the season, on where you might put him on the Heisman ballot right now. But there is still plenty of season left for any of these guys to improve their resume.
I think he is absolutely a candidate. And I think the thing that he has going for him the most, obviously making plays with his legs, but it's the clutch gene that to me is why Marcel stands out as he does. I'm gonna say he stands out the most. But I think if your question is he a Marcel? He is. Is he a Heisman candidate right now? Is he on the Heisman list? I would say absolutely he is. He is the quarterback of an 8-0 team, and they are 8-0 in large part because of him.
And I think we were having a discussion before recording, having a good back and forth. And I think the factor that's missing in a lot of these conversations is the fact that there is no set in stone definition of what a Heisman winner is. It just is the most outstanding player.
And look, maybe Diego Pavia has his Heisman moment this weekend. Maybe they don't. Maybe Texas starts to roar back, and all of a sudden Vanderbilt cruises to an extra 2 or 3 losses before the end of the season. We don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, as much season has gone on, and as proud I am of this team, we had almost the exact same record at this point last year. Right before Halloween, we were 7-1. We are 8-0 right now. We had the same conference record. We were 5-0. Now, I happen to think that this team is much different than that last team. But I only say that to say there's still lots of season left. There are still 3 really big games that we have to go and take care of business. But I also happen to think that because of how we did against Notre Dame, if you get one more conference win, I think we have a chance to go to Atlanta, but I think we are in the playoffs. That's just what I happen to think. I think we have earned the right to still be in that conversation, even if we drop 2 more games, especially if you consider how those games are won or lost. So that's just where I'm at right now with it. I'm trying to enjoy the ride while at the same time being a little bit nervous about what going to Missouri could mean with a quarterback that we don't have a ton of film on, which, we've got a lot of last game on there. That's another BAS demon to slay, Mike.
Yeah.
Mike Elko.
He's been doing it, though.
He absolutely has. And how is A&M going to do against the backup quarterback? And in a lot of times in the past, the answer is really, really bad. Do you guys remember Shea Patterson? Nobody does but me and other Aggies. So
yeah,
I don't know. We'll talk more about that next week. Bo Nix?
Yeah.
We'll talk more about that next week.
Yeah. I mean, yes, I agree. I think A&M is in the playoff. Is one of the teams that you can almost ink in to the playoffs at this point. It's just a matter of, are you going to Atlanta before that?
You brought up last year. At this point last year, we were saying they control their own destiny.
Sure.
And wow, I think it could happen. This feels a lot different this year. I feel like it's the way they're playing and the way this team is, it's like, yes, they're in.
Right.
I don't see a way where that BAS comes in and they just completely face plant. I just don't see it.
I want to say the number crunching nerds have him as like a 96% lock for the playoff, and that includes potentially losing it, dropping a game.
Yeah, they could lose. They could lose at Missouri, and I still wouldn't be worried about them going.
And a large part of that is Marcel. A large part of that is also a defense that is mistake prone, but has really figured out how to lock the hell in the second half of games.
I do have a question for you. How much, as we're kind of talking about,
are we good on recording time, by the way?
Yeah, we're good on recording time.
Oh, cool.
How much does getting a trip to Atlanta weigh in on your thoughts or feelings or desires about this season in regards to also just getting to the playoff?
I think they're co-equal, honestly. Okay. Co-equal is redundant. I think they're equal because going to Atlanta for the first time since we've been in the SEC would be huge. An SEC championship trophy would be great. but a playoff berth would be, I think, just as important. And so I'm kind of sitting here like, okay, what if we won the SEC championship tournament or game and lost our first round in the playoffs? Would I be disappointed? Maybe a little bit. But if we went to Atlanta and then lost and then won our first playoff game, to me, those would be equal. Like, yes, we didn't get an SEC championship, but we made it to the playoff, and we were there. We were in the conversation trying to get ourselves to the semifinals. So maybe that SEC championship trophy is a little bit more valuable than just one playoff win, but I think they're pretty similar. I will also say, and I told this to Aaron, our resident Alabama fan, if we go into Atlanta and let's just say it's against Alabama and we end up losing that game, and that is the difference between a first-round bye and like a 5, 6, or 7 seed, I kind of want the 5, 6, or 7 seed because I would love a home playoff game. I think that would be so flippin' awesome to have a playoff game at Kyle Field. I think that would. I don't know that it would be worth changing out that seed, but that would be so cool. It would be so flippin' cool.
So sorry.
Is that a loser mentality?
I agree, but I don't think any coach would ever agree with you because
Sure,
that's giving up a first-round bye.
Totally.
And despite the weird things that happened last year of all the first-round bye teams lost, at that point of the season with the wear and tear, you're going to want that extra.
Yeah, and if
extra game off.
If this Le'Veon injury goes on a little bit longer than what we were thinking, I think we're kind of hoping we get him back maybe as early as, say, Texas or even Samford or something like that. First round bye would actually be quite advantageous there. So yeah, I think they're equal to re-answer your question
because it's all about us.
Yeah,
and we've discussed this. Like for the team guys and gals covering the team, like when they get to go to a bowl, that's like a little treat for us too. Especially like last year they didn't get to go to the SEC title game or the playoffs, but they actually went to the Las Vegas
Bowl.
Bowl.
To go to Vegas.
Yeah, Viva Las Vegas.
That might not be the most prestigious of bowl games, but it was really fun for us.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of a factor of like, what's in this for me? The worst possible scenario is that they don't go to Atlanta and then they get a first round playoff game and then they lose because that's just covering another home game. And
I could name a worse one.
What?
What if we get in the playoff and we have to go somewhere like Lubbock?
I like going to see other. I think actually, even if it is going to another school,
okay,
I think
gotcha.
That's fun because you get to go
experience another stadium,
and kind of get to get that travel. So I would rather when it's all about me. I would rather travel if you knew that they're going to lose that first round.
You enjoy that drive up Highway 287, brother.
Yeah, I was about to say, you can travel Lubbock all you want.
We're not doing. That's not going to happen. By the way,
that's not. But I like. I like getting to go see new things. So anyway, real quick, I know we went long on other stuff. So our buddy Alex Egan burst in here yesterday. Because he's the one who actually came up with this segment, the Around the SEC.
I was going to say, we ought to just have him front these from now on because
really
I feel like
should.
he's the one who
his segment.
finds the headlines.
We really should. But this was a good one. In Mississippi, monkeys, potentially diseased, but actually not because they came back and said they're not, escaped a wrecked 18-wheeler and are on the loose. Did any of y'all read this more thoroughly than I did this morning?
No,
I skimmed. I kind of know the headlines and bullet points and kind of what happened.
I was the classic uninformed consumer, and I said, "Well, that's weird," and then laughed about it, talked about it with some people.
Yeah, so they were coming from Tulane. They were scientific monkeys, that you can run tests on and things. They were being transported to another facility to do that, and the truck had a wreck, and the monkeys got out. And then first there was reported that they had like every disease known to man, and they were aggressive. And then Tulane, where they came from, said no, they don't have diseases, but they could be a little dangerous. I like how the Tulane in the statement just called them non-human primates.
Yeah.
So like,
was Jeff Banks involved in this at all?
I'm not touching that one.
Okay.
But like you're just you're minding your own business on Highway 6, eating some Funyuns, and a truck, collides in front of you, and then just like a bunch of monkeys runs out. What are you doing?
I am staying in the car, and if I can get out of there, I'm getting out of there. If I can't, I am locking every possible thing. I'm not letting those primates in there.
You don't want to make a buddy?
To them. No,
Monkeys
no.
are really cool. And,
Yes,
you
they
know,
are. Yes, they are. But I don't trust them to not try to rip my face off or give me a disease.
Do you?
I would have assumed that was going to be like if I saw a monkey on the side of the road. That's different than finding a dog. I'm not going to try to render aid. Maybe I'll call animal control and be like, "Hey, y'all take care of this." Call the county. But no, I am not taking matters into my own hands in that situation, and I am either driving
that's
away.
Specious of you.
No, it's not.
I would be
it's
curious
not.
enough that if it was maybe try following one of the monkeys a little bit, just to. It's just something you don't see
What's
every day.
the most random animal that you've just happened across while you were driving, just in the wild, and not counting like Aggie Land Safari or something?
I don't know.
Yeah.
So I remember
I've taken a lot of possums, a lot of armadillos, a lot of raccoons,
vividly. So famously, former Chancellor John Sharp, in his property, especially when they lived over at the Reed House, which is over there across from like the intramural fields, famously had pet peacocks that roamed the premises. And I remember driving down George Bush, coming from 2818, and there is a peacock just running down the road beside the car. And I want to say the most I did was take a picture and tweet it.
Yeah.
Just kind of hoping somebody would, figure that out, but also, doing it for the Twitter.
Yeah, you gotta do it. You gotta do it for content.
Yeah. So this was wild. This was because our station in wherever this was, Mississippi.
I was gonna say Jackson
wrote this up, and we were able
Meridian,
to put
maybe.
in there. So this was a hot topic in the newsroom yesterday. The potentially diseased, not diseased monkeys in Mississippi. And
I'll wrap it up with that.
Yeah.
we'll finish it with that.
On that monkey note.
So we won't be doing anything with A&M football this week because they are open. We'll have plenty of other A&M content.
Just sit back and watch some other football.
Just watch some other football. What game are you most interested in this
Well,
weekend?
so there's Kansas State and Texas, which like a lot of people have been talking this week about. If you look at this week's slate with all the preseason rankings,
It looked like it was a great
it
week.
was going to be just a fantastic week of football. I am kind of interested to see what Frank Wilson can muster up against. Oh, that's next weekend. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's Vanderbilt, Texas, which is still
Vanderbilt, Texas is probably the one that I'm maybe the only one that I plan on watching from start to finish. I think Florida, Georgia could be kind of interesting. I do think that Tech and Kansas State could be interesting at first. I think Tech's going to pull away.
Oklahoma, Tennessee's that's
Oklahoma,
the big
Tennessee will probably be very good because that's a really good defense versus a really good offense, and a really bad offense versus a really bad defense. Who's that Nebraska has? USC, Nebraska might be a good game. Cincinnati,
there
Utah.
could be some sneaky good games.
Georgia Tech,
South
NC
Carolina,
State.
Ole Miss might be under
Right,
the radar.
yeah.
Good one.
Sellers can be a game changer at any point. Like, there's really good football on this weekend. West Virginia, Houston. Houston's going to win that one.
Yeah.
Miami, SMU.
Yeah.
That's a marquee matchup too. And there's a drug-related bowl name in there that I'm just not going to say on this family program.
There you go.
But yeah, there's a lot of really good games on Penn State, Ohio State. People keep saying like, "Oh, I don't know." That's not going to happen.
It's funny that you there was that tweet that went out, before the season started, saying like, if anybody asks you to do anything this weekend, you're crazy because it's going to be the best weekend ever.
Maybe this is the pumpkin patch weekend.
And then it's kind of like you're looking like, no, not really. But then with all the like where is Lane Kiffin? Is Lane Kiffin going to go somewhere? Yeah. What are they? They have a big matchup. What is that going to look like?
What the heck is going to happen in the ACC?
Yeah, Penn State potentially is still one of the toughest matchups just on paper that Ohio State is going to face this year. What does that look like? Can Vanderbilt keep the thing going?
UVA and Cal,
Nebraska. Matt Rule targeted potentially for Penn State. This is one of the big tests that can maybe prove. I don't know. There's still a lot of sub
the
category drama to keep in touch with.
It makes this sport great. Every week there's always great stories.
It makes it fantastic, and this is why I pay attention to college football and not the NFL. So for that, be sure to check out Max's forecast. It's getting a little chilly outside.
It might rain Saturday too.
Oh, look at that.
Yep, heads up.
Moisture.
So Max, check him out there. Check Tyler back in action.
I am back.
On the 5, 6, and 10. We'll have plenty on KBTX.com this week to keep you entertained in the open week. And so for that, for Max, Tyler, I'm Travis. This is the Aggie Game Day Extra podcast, and we'll see you next week.